Welcome back to Sophia's Diary. Before we unlock today's secret, I have a quick request. I truly love connecting with you all. So, if you're watching, please do two things for me right now. First, tell me the time and country you are watching from down in the comments. It means the world to see how far these stories travel. Second, if you haven't already, please tap that subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of the heartbreaks and breakthroughs we share here. Your support helps me keep this diary open. Done? Wonderful. Now, grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's turn the page to today's entry.
The silence in the house was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It had been 7 weeks since I lost Ethan, my husband, my best friend, the anchor of my whole world, to an unexpected heart attack. Grief isn't just sadness, it's a physical weight, a permanent lack of oxygen. I was drowning in the memory of his laugh, the scent of his old sweater, and the utter terrifying emptiness of our shared life. Then came the day of the will reading. The lawyer, Mr. Hayes, spoke in dry, sterile legal terms about the house, the retirement fund, the car. It was all so final, so practical. But then he paused, cleared his throat, and reached for a heavy, dark leather object. And finally, Mr. Hayes said, adjusting his tie, Ethan left a specific bequest for his wife, Sarah. He slid it across the table. It was an antique journal, beautifully bound, tied with a thin, faded green ribbon. I expected his last words. I expected a final, aching love letter. I snatched it up, my heart pounding with a desperate hope for one last piece of him. I tore the ribbon off, opened the cover, and looked inside. It was completely blank. Every single page. I threw the journal across the room when I got home. Was this some kind of sick joke? After a week of staring at that empty, mocking object, I called Mr. Hayes, demanding an explanation. He just sighed and said, Ethan insisted it was a task, not a gift. He said you would need to earn its secrets. Earn its secrets. The phrase dug into my skin. Ethan loved riddles. He loved puzzles. I picked up the journal again, running my fingers along the leather cover. That's when I noticed it. The edges of the pages weren't perfectly smooth. They were slightly stiff, almost glued together in one corner. With trembling fingers, I separated the stiff pages near the spine. Tucked tightly inside was a small folded piece of paper. It wasn't a love letter, it was a list. A list of 10 things I had to do. The first item read, simply, find the red balloon. Write down what it meant to you. I was stunned. The red balloon was an old silly joke from our first date 10 years ago. It felt like a lifetime ago. A painful memory, but a starting point. I knew I couldn't write in the journal yet. Ethan wanted me to do these things first. The first task led me back to the exact spot where we first kissed. A small, hidden park bench by a river. The red balloon had been a cheap, ridiculous prize he won for me at a carnival that night. It floated away the second I took it. I wrote about that memory, about the silly laughter, about the freedom of that night. But it was hard. The joy was clouded by the pain of his absence. The second task was harder. Forgive the unforgivable. This one stopped me cold. Ethan knew about my strained relationship with my sister, Clara. We hadn't spoken in 5 years, not since a stupid, spiteful argument tore us apart. My stubbornness had created the biggest regret of my adult life. How could I reach out now, after all this time? Yet here it was, a final instruction from the man who understood me better than I understood myself. I made the call. It was awkward. It was painful. But by the time I hung up, the 5-year-old weight on my chest had lifted. I wrote down the conversation in the journal, filling the first page with the words I hadn't been able to say before. And as I closed the book, I heard a faint click. I ran my fingers over the spine again. The spine had slightly shifted, revealing a second tightly rolled piece of paper tucked deep inside. The tasks were guiding me. The journal wasn't a diary. It was a treasure map to my own peace. I tore open the second note. Tasks 3 through 5 were about community and giving back, which were very much like Ethan. I spent the next month completing them, volunteering at a shelter, planting a tree, anonymously paying off an old friend's medical bill. Each completed task filled a page in the journal, and each page opened another note. But the sixth task was the one that stopped me dead. It read, "Find the boy. Tell him what I couldn't." The boy? What boy? I didn't understand. Ethan had no children, no family secrets, that I knew of. This was a mystery entirely outside of our marriage. I flipped through the journal to the 6th page. The entry was written in my hand, but below my words, Ethan had written 2 names in his distinct handwriting. Jeremy Vance, Dallas, Texas. I spent a frantic week tracing the name. Jeremy Vance was Ethan's estranged younger brother. I had never even known Ethan had a younger brother. I confronted Mark's best friend, David. David was hesitant, but the truth finally spilled out. Ethan and Jeremy had been inseparable as kids, but Ethan's parents had forced Ethan to cut off all ties with Jeremy when Jeremy got into trouble with the law at 17. Ethan had obeyed, but the grief and guilt had haunted him for 20 years. He never told me because he was ashamed of the choice he had made. The next day, I was on a plane to Dallas. I knew I was fulfilling a mission, but also stepping into the middle of a decades-old heartbreak that wasn't mine. I found Jeremy working at a small construction yard. He was rough around the edges, weary, and immediately hostile. "Who are you?" he demanded. I introduced myself, and his face hardened. I told him about the will and the journal, pulling out the pages I had filled. I told him about the 6th task, find the boy. Tell him what I couldn't. Then I delivered Ethan's message, the one he carried for 20 years. Ethan never stopped thinking about you. He never stopped loving you. He never forgave himself for choosing his parents over you. He was too ashamed of his choice to tell me, but he wanted you to know that the greatest regret of his life was the silence between you two. Jeremy broke. He didn't cry loud, just deep shaking sobs. He told me he always thought Ethan hated him, that he was unforgivable. I told him Ethan died, holding on to the regret of their separation. We sat there for an hour, 2 strangers bonded by the ghost of the man we both loved. When I got back to the hotel, I wrote in the journal about the meeting. I wrote about the pain, the forgiveness, and the love. I opened the journal to the 7th note. It listed tasks 7 through 9. Finish Ethan's half-completed bookshelf, donate his fishing gear, and finally, forgive myself for not seeing his pain. After a few quiet weeks, I had completed all 9 tasks. I sat down with the journal for the 10th and final time. I had filled 9 pages with painful memories, brave acts of forgiveness, and newfound purpose. I pulled out the final note, tucked deep inside the spine. The note was blank except for one word in the middle, done. Beneath the word in his neat handwriting was a postscript. It read, "The 10th task, my love, is to start writing your own story. I didn't leave you an empty journal to complete mine. I left you 9 instructions to prove you still had life and love left to give. Now, the rest of the pages are for you." I realized the empty journal wasn't a cruel joke. It wasn't about a hidden life. It was a message of unconditional love and redemption written to me. Ethan knew I was so lost in grief. I had forgotten how to live. He forced me to reconnect, to heal, to forgive, and to find my purpose. The greatest gift he ever gave me wasn't a finished book. It was the courage to write a new beginning. And that finally gave me peace.